Vietnam is one of the first countries to reach an initial tariff agreement with Washington. Erin, what is the primary goal of the U.S. Vietnam tariff agreement?
So the U.S. Vietnam tariff agreement is part of the overall agreement that the U.S. is conducting with dozens and dozens of countries in trying to get our trade barriers with other countries down to near zero. Trump's argument is that other countries have really high tariff rates on U.S. products going into a country, and that has been inherently unfair. So for Vietnam, the U.S. had applied a 46% reciprocal tariff rate. Of course, with a 90-day pause, they put it down to 10%. But this deal is to try to get at least a more permanent tariff rate, but also a better trade agreement.
How do these efforts support decoupling of U.S. China trade relations?
So we still don't know a lot about what's in the actual trade agreement. The things that we do know right now between the U.S. and Vietnam, and we're probably going to get more details this week, but again, it will probably be similar to what we saw with the U.K., which was about a 4-page document with kind of vague outlines of what a framework would be, and then multiple months of negotiation. So I expect that we're going to see that. But what we're going to have is a 20% tariff on Vietnamese imports into the United States, but then this really interesting 40% tariff on products that are transshipped through Vietnam. What that's really trying to do is to target Chinese imports. China has been using other markets like Southeast Asia to sort of circumvent some of the tariff issues and any other export controls or other sanctions issues. Vietnam is certainly not the only country where this happens, but there are questions remains about what does that exactly mean? What are the products of origin? Do origin content make sense? What are the content requirements? So for example, if a car is manufactured in Vietnam but has a Chinese door, does that mean that it's a Chinese product? So there's still going to be a lot of questions even if we do see an agreement, but this is really targeted, I think, in part to how do you start decoupling or de-risking from the China market.
To what extent does Vietnam benefit from its trade relationship between China and the U.S.?
It's really unclear to see how Vietnam is fully going to benefit in terms of its trade relationship with the United States and with China and with this new trade agreement. Again, 20% is pretty high. 40% is also pretty high, especially if we don't know what exactly the transshipment means, especially when it comes to content requirements. But for Vietnam, this trade agreement was pretty critical because nearly 1/3 of its GDP is through exports to the United States. For China, it's about 17%. So these are two very important markets for Vietnam. It needs to maintain its relationship with both. But when you're looking at the numbers, the U.S. relationship is a little bit more important right now.